The independent living was, and I don't know if a lot of people know this, but that was the world that I came from. Gerben de Young and I had both been involved in the independent living movement. First met Gerben, I think, in 1979 or 1980, somewhere around there. We presented at a conference, but we both were very involved in independent living. And that was critical to me because, a lot of people with disabilities looked at medical rehabilitation as kind of paternalistic and not really understanding people with disabilities. I was with the Independent Living, the Research and Training Center on Independent Living at the University of Kansas. And so I came from that background where it's about the person, that this, and I think that the philosophy of ACRM kind of swam along with that. Gerben had his seminal article of defining kind of the premise of independent living, and I think ACRM has embraced that, and I think that's really, really important. I think that ACRM probably has contributed more to the field of brain injury than, a lot of folks really understand, especially in the area of low level or, coma kind of research. And so along with the independent living part of that, bringing people with cognitive disabilities in, because in the independent living movement, that was basically founded by people who have physical disabilities. And so, embracing the community of people who have brain injuries was, I think, really important to recognize that, yes, these people may have cognitive issues, but they can be valuable contributors to, both the independent living movement and society.
That movement was one that created a little bit of discussion in its origins, but I, as a physician and others, supported the idea of expanding the independence and community orientation of people with disabilities. In fact, I still am right now on the board of an organization that is focused on doing that, providing community residences or houses and support services that allow people to live outside of facilities, but in their own housing.
I happen to be interested in brain injury, and the Brain Injury Interdisciplinary Special Interest Group is one of the most productive and prolific groups in the organization, and I would make the case that group is probably one of the most productive in the world. So in terms of scientific publishing, in terms of practice, and even driving policy.
Brain injury folks were better organized and more vocal than the spinal cord injury folks. So there was a lot of rivalry there between the two groups. And I think the brain injury folks were initially viewed as outsiders and basically, oh, you want to deal with that? And you want to deal with those people? And basically, we formed our own social networks and professional networks, and ACRM became our meeting place. And I think it was that view that was able to move us forward, and seeing ACRM is about interdisciplinary rehab research. And that's now part of our tagline that we developed a few years ago. And I think that serves us very well. When this all started, basically, brain injury was not on anybody's radar screen. And those of us who were working in the field knew that it was an important issue, and we needed to focus a lot of advocacy efforts on brain injury if we were to be effective rehab providers to folks with brain injury. So I think a lot of our initial effort was to get people to put brain injury on their radar screen so that they could see that some of the impairments and issues that people with brain injury have indeed were amenable to treatment.
For me, when I joined well over 30 years ago as an early career physician, a neurologist working in rehabilitation and brain injury, at my first meeting, I was greeted, welcomed, and engaged almost immediately by well-known academic leaders whom I had admired from afar. And I was approached by other early career colleagues, including Joe Giacino, to participate right away in active, productive ACRM projects, part of the new brain injury task force that was to become the brain injury ISIG. The contacts, the collaborations, and the friendships I've made during that first meeting have been lifelong. They changed my career. They contributed enormously to my life's work. ACRM changed my life and my career. This is a wonderful organization, and I celebrate 100 years of ACRM. Now, in my world of brain injury, ACRM's contributions have been far-reaching and lasting. Contributions such as the definitions of mild traumatic brain injury, the cognitive rehabilitation guidelines, diagnostic criteria and practice guidelines for disorders of consciousness. These have had enormous influence on worldwide clinical practice and research. And ACRM's reach and international reputation continues to grow and develop.
Glad to talk about what's now the Measurement Interdisciplinary Special Interest Group. The idea for the meeting group came from Wayne Gordon, who attended and contributed to a pre-conference workshop colleagues and I led in Toronto somewhere around 2007, 2008, I believe. We formed initially what is now known as a networking group, developed bylaws, provided opportunities for others to serve as leaders within ACRM. It really provides an opportunity to focus on what are called outcome measures, but generally measurement issues in general in medical rehabilitation. So much of the clinician measured or patient-reported outcome measures or the instrumented tests that are increasingly used need to demonstrate evidence of reliability, validity, sensitivity to change. And some instruments used in geriatrics, aging research with other disability populations or the general population may be very suitable to the populations we're interested in physical medicine rehabilitation, people with chronic illness, people with physical and other disabilities. Really special care needs to be paid to how well those measures work in the populations we're interested in. It's provided a nice point of contact for people who want to improve, whether it's clinician reported measures, patient reported measures, or instrumented outcomes. I'm pleased that the networking group has grown and now is an ISIG within the current ACRM structure.
Alan Heinemann putting together a team for a grant proposal to NIDRR for an RRTC, a Rehabilitation Research Training Center. I had gotten interested in what was known as the black box of rehabilitation, which essentially represented the idea that we get patients, we deliver a variety of services, and we send them home either from inpatient or from outpatient, improved with more physical function, for those with, say, stroke, more cognitive function, participating more in society and what have you. But we really don't know what was going on in those services that were being delivered. And the traditional answer was, well, they got 20 hours of PT and 44 hours of OT and 2 hours of psychology. But that's not describing the services received other than by a very opaque, very general. So my idea was, well, can we open that black box more, get better descriptions of what rehabilitation professionals do hour by hour. I got in contact was contacted by John White in Philadelphia and his colleague Tessa Hart, who had an interest in similar things. And we started working on stuff. At some point, we convinced the board that the organization needed to have a task force or community on classification of the rehab process, which it allowed. It also, and that was when I was not president, but a few years before, went on record that if we developed something that would be on a level with the International Classification of Disability, Function and Health, the ACRM would be the nominal owner of it and steer it and publish it and take responsibility for it, etc.
About mid-2000, there was a strategic decision by the leaders at the time to expand internationally. The changes in technology, the advances in communication, email, internet, were conducive to this expansion. And it was also to aid the sustainability in terms of globalizing and interacting with other researchers that are doing rehabilitation research around the world. There were these strategic decisions in mid-2000 where we have the creation of the international community, the international committee. We have the participation of the European PM&R Society at the 2007 conference, and then also strategic decisions in terms of where to hold our annual conference. And so we have the Canadian presence where in 2008, 2010, 2012, 2014, we held the conference at different locations in Canada. Between 2015 to date, where we have additional initiatives that really have fostered the international growth. Other initiatives include the growth in the number of communities, where we see an expansion in the communities, which provides opportunities for people within the US and also globally to find a home within ACRM. Also, our participation at other international conferences such as Rehab Week, and to really think about how is globalization also beneficial to ACRM members who might not be thinking about globalization, but can also benefit by having this interaction. So it's a two-way street. We are helping with capacity building, maybe where is needed, but also learning about different ways of conducting rehabilitation research and services in that perhaps we have not thought about.
So international growth happened a great deal during my presidency in 2013 to 2015, and that was really through John's leadership in developing growth worldwide.
I'd like to create a measured expansion of international sites. We're going to Toronto next year.
And in addition, the leaders and editors of the archives of physical medicine and rehabilitation, Leighton Chan and Alan Heinemann, also noticed and noted to us that the publications were coming into their journal worldwide. So we really had an incentive to invite many of those individuals coming from international settings to join us at ACRM. We've had a great deal of international members attend the conference in addition to publishing in our journal. And many of them are physicians, so I also started the Physicians and Clinicians group to have a home for them and interact with US-based physicians and clinicians.
And our reach across this continent and around the world has developed enormously over the last 15 years. Again, through our journals, our conferences, our courses, our contributions to research, policy efforts, clinical guidelines and definitions, our partnerships with other organizations.
I served during an interesting transition in ACRM's ownership of the Archives of Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation. For many decades, we were co-owners with the American Academy of Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation of the archives, and we had some very interesting discussions with their leadership over the ownership and the future of the journal. It's certainly one of the crown jewels of ACRM, and we wanted to make sure that it was intact, continue to serve ACRM members' needs. I'm pleased to say that the journal has continued to thrive since then. It allows us to focus on the needs of ACRM members, the emerging special interest groups, and the various networking groups that comprise ACRM today. I really am pleased with the composition and the contributions of the editorial board members. They represent the diversity of rehabilitation professions in the field, a variety of expertise, whether it's bench science, whether it's clinical expertise within different disciplines. Nursing and allied health contributors as well are represented on the editorial board. So it's been a real delight to work with them to help contribute to the quality of the science that we report and on which clinicians and scientists and patients and their care partners depend for quality information about rehabilitation.
I was really fortunate to be part of the Archives Steering Committee when we discussed and founded ART, the Archives for Rehabilitation Research and Clinical Translation. And the reason I like it so much is because just the name of it highlights what ACRM is all about. Archives is a collection of the most rigorous research that can have great impact on rehab medicine. ART takes it a step closer to taking information that might be clinically relevant, provides the evidence for it, and helps get it closer to clinical translation and clinical practice. It gives another opportunity for researchers who are doing very meaningful work, but maybe didn't reach the bar for archives yet. It needs to get out there. It gives it a vehicle to get that information out there in a meaningful way so that clinicians can start using that information, using that evidence to change their practice, to get the best impact and outcomes for their patients.
So Archives offers both the traditional model where authors upload and readers may need to pay a fee to read the content, but we also offer authors an opportunity to publish open access daughter journal, Archives of Rehabilitation Research and Clinical Translation, That is an entirely open access, only online journal. So it's for all the content is free for readers to consume, and authors have I think, a very competitive open access fee, which is again discounted for ACRM members.
There are two big challenges in the research that we do in rehab medicine, and ACRM embraces both of them. One is we want to have the most rigorous research. We need to get funding for the most rigorous research, and we also then need to disseminate the findings from that research. And archives, it offers us that opportunity for that. The other problem is disseminating that information in the most meaningful way to as many stakeholders as possible. And there are barriers for access to journals. Many people in smaller clinics can't access those journals easily. Patients can't access the information in those journals. Open access gives us the opportunity to disseminate information that is very meaningful and relevant, disseminate evidence so that it can be used by our stakeholders, by clinicians, by patients and families, and others who might not otherwise have access to journals that are not freely available.
With the expansion of the networking groups, you have to think about ACRM as not just a vertical in just looking at one area, one discipline. It's really about the interprofessional and the diagnostic groups. It's not just one diagnostic group. You can come to ACRM if you're interested in brain injury or spinal cord injury or stroke or behavioral health or alternative medicine or lifestyle medicine, whatever your interests are, there's a home for you here at ACRM. There are so many different avenues where we touch in rehabilitation medicine. You can get everything in one stop, or you can be involved in one group, or you could be involved in multiple different networking or interdisciplinary special interest groups. It's amazing how much rehabilitation science touches, and ACRM is an area that I could almost guarantee you that some aspect, if you're involved in physical medicine and rehabilitation, will touch you in your career.
I had the privilege of starting the spinal cord injury special interest group, interdisciplinary special interest group, and here I was asked by someone many years ago who said, "We don't have any spinal cord injury expertise within ACRM, why don't you start it?" And so I said, okay, I will. And it started out small, and we grew into a task force, and eventually into a committee and an interdisciplinary special interest group, which is flourishing today with many other wonderful leaders of that group.
Well, actually, the head injury or brain injury program became a special interest group during the time I was president. It had been working in the background in the meantime, but it became formally a special interest group.
Early during my time on the board before I was president, we started to grow. After spinal cord injury, things took off. And our biggest challenge then, and continues to be, to ensure that we're not getting too fragmented with our groups. So while we want to be sure to serve the unique needs for the different populations that the groups represent, our biggest challenge is not to become too fragmented, because having a unified voice in rehab medicine is what's going to propel us forward. We have to have a unified voice with the policymakers, with payers, so that they understand the true value across all our patient types, the true value of what rehab medicine brings, and how rehab medicine can help address some of the biggest challenges in healthcare right now. We can't get it all done with medicine and surgeries. We keep people alive that we didn't used to be able to keep alive. We have an aging population. Rehabilitation medicine has been shown to be, and will continue to be, one of the best approaches to helping people recover fully or as much as possible, at least return to a high quality of life after trauma or disease during aging process. People like Gary Ulicny, Sisto, Doug Katz, and many others, they're just such a special part of ACRM. And there are so many people like them who want to mentor younger or less experienced researchers or clinicians who want to develop in rehab medicine, whether they're physical therapists, speech therapists, researchers, engineers. They're there to help us. And that to me is one of the most meaningful things about ACRM. And ACRM, we really value our early career development program. And I really value being able to work with young researchers or clinicians or engineers who want to be part of rehab medicine and may not really know how to be part of rehab medicine. I love to help bring them into our different groups. If I know somebody's very interested in something in particular, I love to embrace that and help them find their community group, help them find their colleagues who are working on similar things, who might have similar passions, definitely have the same mission, and help them develop. It was really exciting when, during my presidency, I really wanted to start the leadership development initiative. So it's really a wonderful opportunity to help others develop so that we can continue for the next 100 years in ACRM to have an influence on rehab medicine so that we can provide the best care to our patients and that there's knowledge and support for the value of what we can do with rehab medicine. I started in ACRM shortly after I finished my doctoral training in neuroscience, and I really was wondering where I fit in now as a physical therapist and a researcher. And I was doing research in spinal cord injury, primarily focused in the upper limb and arm and hand rehabilitation. And so I had this little niche and I was looking for other people like myself. And I knew I couldn't just look for another physical therapist or another neuroscientist, that it was going to have to be something a little different. And in talking with Gary Ulicny, who was my CEO at Shepherd Center at the time and my boss, he suggested that I come to ACRM, that it sounded like I needed an interdisciplinary group that was comprised of both clinicians and researchers. He mentioned there was a new spinal cord injury group forming. He thought I'd be great to be on the program committee. He really encouraged me to work with Sisto to develop the SCI-ISIG. When I started doing multiple sclerosis research, he supported me starting the neurodegenerative networking group. He supported me in my growth at Shepherd Center, leading to where I am today as VP of Research and Innovation. So he's had a huge impact on my life, and he, like others at ACRM, are what helped me develop a fulfilling career in rehab medicine.
Joe and I had a conversation, and I think probably an argument right away about something in brain injury. And that introduction, meeting other colleagues like John White and others, really changed my career. It led to lifelong collaborations, lifelong contributions, participation in research, publications, and areas of interest and contribution that I've been able to make throughout my career.
Angela was tremendous. She was a great mentor. Unlike some of my colleagues that joined ACRM because their mentors were leaders and part of ACRM, I joined ACRM on my own. I was encouraged to join ACRM by a couple of colleagues, like David Strauss, the late David Strauss. We were working on a project together. And Mark Ashley, who is actually doing a leadership course this year. I was encouraged and I was brought to ACRM by their encouragement. But then Mitch Rosenthal, whom I have met at ACRM and before, because he was the editor-in-chief of the JHTR, And he encouraged me to participate in the International Committee, and Angela was chair. And as you know, Angela Colantoni is a great mentor. She really encourages young researchers and professionals to grow. When we encourage people to get involved, most of the ACRM leaders can provide similar stories about how they became involved and learned and got to know about the organization, and then do different, engage in different leadership opportunities.
I started doing some research that I decided would be great to publish at the annual meeting of ACRM and PM&R. There was a reception, open house, however you want to call it, on the first day in the late afternoon, where I went, and when I stepped in, a certain Marcus Führer, who I think at the time was president, was standing at the door and greeted me and shook my hand and asked why I was coming, etc. And he was such a nice, friendly guy that I decided, this is my club. And indeed, ACRM has been my club ever since. I pretty much dropped everything that as a sociologist I had learned and done, etc. And became a rehabilitation methodologist, statistician, co-researcher with OTs and PTs and rehab nurses and physiatrists, you have it. And 40 years later, it still has my interest.
I would hope that our scope continues to expand and to get physiatrists involved, because it's a necessary component, as well as all of the other disciplines. Because as we go forward, there seem to be more and more constraints being placed on inpatient rehab, outpatient rehab, and even community services. And we need to start addressing that. And I think ACRM is ideally positioned to do that.
Early during my time on the board, before I was president, we started to grow. After spinal cord injury, things took off. And our biggest challenge then, and continues to be, to ensure that we're not getting too fragmented with our groups. So while we want to be sure to serve the unique needs for the different populations that the groups represent, our biggest challenge is not to become too fragmented, because having a unified voice in rehab medicine is what's going to get us, is going to propel us forward. We have to have a unified voice with the policymakers, with payers, so that they understand the true value across all our patient types, the true value of what rehab medicine brings, and how rehab medicine can help address some of the biggest challenges in healthcare right now. We can't get it all done with medicine and surgeries. We keep people alive that we didn't used to be able to keep alive. We have an aging population. Rehabilitation medicine has been shown to be, and will continue to be, one of the best approaches to helping people recover fully, or as much as possible, at least return to a high quality of life after trauma or disease, during aging process. And we have to be able to demonstrate that value. And the best way to do that is, yes, to explore and provide the evidence for each unique group, but then also find the commonalities and be united in showing the value of rehab medicine.
I should mention our executive director, John Lindberg, who has really pushed this organization in a strong way due to his leadership, vision, and his expertise in marketing, finance, and teamwork development. So he's a wonderful and talented team, as I mentioned. So that has really helped ACRM survive and thrive through his leadership as well as that of the Board of Governors.
I remember, hiring him. I was on the search committee, and basically he came across with so much energy that it was clearly that this organization needed this guy if it was going to not go under. Probably other than me, John Lindberg is the most aggressive person I know, okay? And he saw the vision for what ACRM could be, and he drove that vision into everybody, so that there was nothing, don't tell John Lindberg that we can't do something, okay? He would find a way to get things done, to get ACRM recognized, to get people involved in the organization. He was basically the engine on the machine.
I mean, the proof is in the pudding. You have 3,000 people at the conference. I'm not sure how many members now, but even more importantly, the notability and of the ACRM in the rehabilitation community is incredible now versus what it used to be. I mean, even people who are tied up with one particular professional association, like let's say physical therapy, they're all aware of ACRM, and a lot of their members participate in both of those. So I think it's been incredible growth.
Pretty soon after, well, I don't know how soon, I think 10 years after I joined ACRM, there was the divorce between the Academy and ACRM, which had all kinds of implications, mostly financial, that were really threatening ACRM with respect to its existence. And I think that's when I stepped in and said, I can use some of my knowledge and some of my expertise to try to help this organization survive and hopefully thrive, even though it's lost almost everything except and has interest in the archives of physical medicine and rehabilitation.
I'm Pamela Roberts. I'm the current ACRM president. Over the past 4 years as being the ACRM president, it has been amazing and inspirational, the dedication of all the members throughout the world of really looking at rehabilitation science and moving rehabilitation science forward. And working through the 100-year anniversary and working with the past presidents, it's been amazing to understand and learn the history from what's been written down and then what's been learned anecdotally of the passion and how instrumental that ACRM has been in moving rehabilitation science forward. From the days of Gerben de Jong and looking at the disability movement, to thinking ahead in the cognitive manual, and many, I don't even think I could name them, all the initiatives that have happened throughout the years, as well as our journals and being forward thinking of developing an open access journal and thinking about how do we continue to move rehabilitation science forward throughout what's going on politically as well as regulatory, to continue to have rehabilitation science at the forefront.